technological innovation core to the oil and gas industry's DNA. Global E&P players have been swift to adopt and harness the power of digital in creating competitive advantage. It's what we've talked about pretty much for the last 2 days. For an industry marked with uncertainties, volatilities, and external threats, digital can stabilize and innovate across the business as operators reboot towards remote working, boundaryless organization, and new operating models, cost reset, and lean operations. Our closing interviewee, Ranjan Ghosh, is a digital strategy leader at Chevron and global transformation expert. And he's here to talk with me about what it really means to take your organization through digital transformation, what the right digital talents are, and what the digital focus will be for this industry within the next 5 years. So let's find out. Hello, Ranjan.
Hey, Adam. How are you doing?
I'm really well, sir. And yourself?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for asking.
Good, I'm glad. Look, I know we've got a lot to cover, so I'm going to sort of get into it as quickly as we can. As per usual, all the usual rules apply. If you've got any question or comment or contribution, whatever, please do at any point raise your virtual hand and we'll bring you straight in and get you straight involved. Look, Ranjan, as we come out of the COVID crisis, looking at a sort of 3-year horizon, where do you think people are going to be focusing their digital efforts?
Well, Adam, as I answered this question, and probably for many of the other questions, I'll try to draw from my experience, not only just in oil and gas, but also from multiple other industries that I have worked in the past. I believe the focus in manufacturing in general will be on how to build a resilient, multi-country, multi-threaded, diverse supply chain network. In the last year, we have felt and seen the supply disruption in many industries due to the COVID demand changes. In certain industries, I think there will be a more committed effort to bring manufacturing closer to the customer base. Now, that may or may not be in the form of normal size manufacturing facilities that we are used to seeing. That may be in the form of micro facility, that may be in the form of backup manufacturing facilities, or even the concept of factory in a box type of a facility. And the other key element, I think, would be is the visibility into the entire supply chain. That I think will be a key. The lack of the entire supply chain visibility, as you know, was a major cause of demand and supply misalignment during the COVID times.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. Yeah, of course. And what about oil and gas? Where do you think their digital focus should be?
For oil and gas, I think the focus will be primarily in 3 areas. First, asset management. I was looking at one of the recent McKinsey report, which found out that advanced connectivity to optimize drilling and production throughput, and also improve maintenance and field operations, could add up to $250 billion value in the upstream by 2030. That's within like 8-9 years from now. Oil and gas industry has always been capital asset intensive operation. The quick project completion and asset reliability have always been the key to success. Now, prior to COVID, digital focus started to fall on how to merge these physical assets with the digital world of virtual assets. Post-pandemic, that focus is beginning to pick back up the pace one more time. Ability to speed up the asset in service process and be able to predict the asset performance and maintenance will be a huge boost in this industry. Digital twin will enable those functionalities. Second area of focus will be lower carbon. Efficiency and optimization of field operations will lead to lower carbon in the energy sector in general. A key to building efficiency in operations is integrating and streamlining operations through various technologies, including connected worker solutions. Third is renewable energy. To lower carbon in the environment, we not only need efficient operations, but we also need investment in renewable energy sources like CNG, like hydrogen, geothermal. As for geothermal, I was actually looking at a recent CNBC report where it mentioned that 0.1% of the Earth's total heat can meet human energy needs for 2 million years. The combination of new directional drilling technologies and AI and other digital solutions can make geothermal a really viable energy source.
And I just, if we can just sort of take a step back a minute and just get your opinion on something. What I have found super interesting over the last, day and a half now, I guess, really, is the fact that at other summits that we do, COVID is, and the pandemic is a very, very, very big topic of conversation. At oil and gas, and I think I understand why, it is less of a topic of conversation because it feels like this industry already has its own existential crisis, which you've addressed there in the kind of decarbonisation, the lower emissions and cleaner energy and all that sort of stuff. Do you mind if I ask, do you feel that there has been an impact, that sort of more widely accepted across other industries, acceleration of digital adoption and transformation in oil and gas because of the pandemic, or was this story sort of already being told?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was specific to pandemic. I think that the digital transformation in oil and gas industry started well before pandemic, and this has been progressing towards where we are at today. And I do believe that that process will expedite over the next few years as we start thinking about the renewable energy and the energy alternatives of the future.
And for somebody like yourself, who kind of leads digital transformation, I mean, that you spend your days and evenings thinking about it and doing it and practically kind of putting it into practice. Does that having a crisis? This is going to sound like such an awful question, but I hope you know what I mean. Does having a crisis help?
Crisis is never good, but it can help in certain cases on certain other areas. So if you look at it, because of the COVID crisis across the industry, not specific to oil and gas, but across the entire industry landscape that you look at, we are doing a lot more remote work, a lot more collaboration through digitally, something that probably many of us never really thought of doing probably in the next 5 to 10 years, as much as we have done in the last year and a half. So there are some goods that can come out of crisis, and for COVID, definitely the digital collaboration and remote working was one of them. And I'm pretty sure we will continue to do that as the companies move to more of a hybrid mode in many cases. That will continue to be a part of it.
And then I just thank you, Ranjan. I really, really appreciate this and you kind of bearing with me. And then I just want to get this last question, if I may. So on day one, Jim Claunch, one of the first things he said was, sometimes we're still sharing information in PDFs. There are still companies in this industry that are maybe at the start of that digital transformation journey. And I want to know what advice you might offer them in the sense that, there are these multiple crises now. There is the pandemic, there is the shift to remote working, there is the existential crisis that hangs over oil and gas altogether. Now surely is the time to do this, because if you don't, I'm not quite sure what you're going to be doing in 5, 6 years' time. How do you get people started? What do you say?
Yeah, look, the way you get started is really by engaging your business leadership team. You must have an engaged business leadership that are willing to develop a comprehensive digital strategy with you, because the digital strategy is not about technology. It's about business engagement. It's about bringing everybody together. So that I would really focus on is that something, if you're starting on a journey, that you must have. You also need to lay out a very clear communication path of what the digital solutions would do to the operators on the shop floor. Digital for the sake of digital is never really effective. You need to be able to show what benefit for each one of those digital technologies is going to bring in for the operators who is doing the work day in and day out. So those are the couple of key elements that I would definitely highlight as you start in must have. Obviously, you need to look through where the value added opportunities are within your value, within your entire value process, and identify where the maximum value you will find. But that would be the third element you look into.
Fantastic. Thank you, Steve. Well, that's the sort of the 101 done. So let's kind of move it on now. Hey, how do we address, and you think, the shortage in qualified and skilled resources?
The first thing I think the companies need to do is change their image. Their image need to change from an industrial company to a digital industrial company. You may have seen on TV how the advertisements have changed for many traditional industrial companies where they're trying to attract technology talents by building a digital image. Next area of focus, I think, should be local talent development programs. I saw a recent survey where it was showing that 60 to 65% of the college graduates end up staying within 50 miles of where they graduate from. Thus, it's in the best interest of manufacturing companies to work with the local universities to create a manufacturing certification program. Also, the manufacturing companies need to work with the local labor organization to develop training programs. This can be supplemented with on-job training program as well. All indications is that the economy is beginning to turn around after COVID. In addition to that, 1.9 trillion relief package that was approved by Congress will be giving additional economic boost by increasing demand. So some of these programs that I just talked about earlier really needs to be expedited to meet the skill shortage.
Of course. And for a successful digital transformation, having the right digital talents are key. What type of talents do you look for in that digital team?
Good question. For a successful digital program, you really need talent in 4 competency areas. First, technology and innovation. You need individuals with emerging technological depth and have the ability to work with business. They must have, or they must be able to see the business value and explain that business value. In Chevron, we are actively helping to grow the Houston innovation ecosystem by investing in incubator programs like Rice University's ION, partnerships like Houston Exponential, and co-funding Houston-based startups. The second element is data. You need someone who understands business data and knows how to integrate them to generate knowledge and create insights. Someone who is able to show the frontline workers on the role that they play to ensure data quality. Third element is process. You need talents with ability to rethink the way things have been done in the past and how to break through those silos and find new ways to drive value. And the fourth one is organizational change management. To sustain your digital transformation, you need people who thinks the human side of the change. Usually these are the people with excellent people skills. Above and beyond these 4 competency areas that I just talked about, you need leaders with 3 critical traits. They must be driven, motivated, and have an unquestionable passion for success. But these 3 traits are common for all leaders and not just specific to digital.
Oh, thank you very much indeed. And as a digital leader, how do you encourage the next generation of leaders? And then there's a part two to this, which is about sort of diversity and inclusion. But actually, I wonder if we could separate those two. How do you encourage the next generation of leaders? And then let's move on to talk about your views on DEI.
Perfect. So many of these emerging digital solutions, as you know, Adam, are unproven and new. That is why, as digital leader, I create an environment that empowers the exploration and ensures that every voice is heard. I try to create a controlled learning environment where digital leaders can experiment with new technologies and find the right business use of the technology. This encourages new leaders to try out new projects without the fear of failure. And to your second part of the question, as for diversity, it is very important to build, there is a very important need for a diversity to build a workplace full of new ideas. Now, the best way to build a diverse workplace is to keep a focus on talents. If we are keeping our focus on talents in a global economy as it is today, we end up creating a diverse workplace. For example, I'll give you my personal example here. When I first came to the United States, I did not really expect that someone will give me a preferential treatment because of my origin and because of my skin color. If someone actually did that to me, I can tell you from my personal experience standpoint is that instead of encouraging me to be better, it would probably discourage me for not trusting on my ability to compete. So what I really looked for then was for an equal playing field for me to compete and to prove myself. That is why creating an equal playing field for all is important, and diversity should come naturally from that.
Of course. And it should do. I mean, you know, it's just a sort of sad reality that very often it doesn't, but it absolutely should do. And hopefully we are all, as a kind of species, getting better at it. I'm curious about if, I suppose typically this language is used for IT product, build versus buy. But I want to use that language to talk about your staff, your people, employees, associates, whatever you want to call it. Where do you sort of sit on because a lot of things we've been talking about, these new skills, new ideas, new talent, new people, et cetera, but that leaves a lot of people who, through no fault of their own, simply don't know the new ways. Where do you sit on the build versus buy? Where do you sit on the reskilling, retraining versus the bringing in of new?
Oh, that's extremely important in terms of retraining your existing employee base. And that is why I mentioned is that in Chevron, we have an extensive program of encouraging our employees through different programs that we have, both local and outside. It is, look, when you are talking about digital technologies, there are new technologies that, really many of your existing employees may not be as familiar with. But the way you want to make sure is that from a long-term standpoint, you need your employees to be reskilled on it. So you need to create a program that will encourage them and excite them to be part of and learn these new technologies. Now, you may have to supplement that with some consultants at the beginning who they will work with and get their skills updated and anything they would learn how to use them. But your long-term strategy definitely has to be your employee base and a solid retraining program.
And right at the start of this morning, we had one of our audience, John Paul Portelli, came up. And I thought he made a really, really good point, which was that when we talk about digital transformation and et cetera, one of the sort of mantras, I'm paraphrasing him, so one of the mantras is, fail fast. But you can't fail if you are a big oil and gas company or even a small oil and gas company. You can't have an oil leak. You can't have a massive failure at one of the refineries or something like that, because there are huge environmental, social, reputational issues with that. So how, if you remove that sort of central tenet, it feels to me, a lot of these sort of, digital native companies, it's all about we let our employees fail. Everyone fails fast. We just learn quicker, et cetera, et cetera. How do you get what's good about that into an oil and gas company where you can't afford to fail?
Well, it really depends on your scope of that failure. I mean, in most cases, what you really want to do is to create specific to digital. You want to create an incubator. So you want to create a program where you can try out new things with in a smaller scale where a failure would not be as impactful as it otherwise would be. And once you can get that perfected really quickly through a pilot program, you can scale that up really quickly. So fail first doesn't have to be in a larger scale, is my point. It can start with a pilot and you expand from it. And that is how I would probably say every one of the digital program really should be executed. And that is where the agile methodology can really come into play.
Yeah, and then get it out quick. A lot of discussion about the use of citizen developers in driving operational efficiencies. What are your thoughts on that?
Good question. So to understand actually the benefits of the citizen developers, let's quickly just walk through about how traditional development process works, even though we all can probably know this by now. In a traditional development process, if there is a business need, one or more business users works with an IT business analyst, could be multiple. That business analyst collects the requirements and engages the design team. The output of that conversation is the design document, which then goes to the development team. And once the development is completed, it goes to the testing team. Now, in an agile methodology, this process does speed up somewhat. However, it is still not as fast as empowering the business users who is able to build their own applications using low code or no code software. Although there's tremendous benefit as I kind of laid out for allowing users to build their own applications, 3 points need to be kept in mind. First, the scope of the solutions being built. It is much easier to develop and support smaller applications by business users. However, when you look into more complex application development and support of that, it still makes sense to keep that with the technology team. The second element is you need guardrails. You need guardrails of citizen application development. Otherwise, without a standard and a guardrail that you have set up, it is hard to build a cost-effective support model. Third, you need to build a marketplace that is easily accessible, manageable, and acceptable by everyone. Something that will act as an enterprise software repository and make sure that there are no duplicate solutions being built for the same business problem.
And what about sort of, kind of supporting each other, collaborative things? So I'm thinking of, in cybersecurity, for example, there are, as well, there are lots of open source foundations and Linux and blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. For financial services, there's FinOS, which again, HSBC are in and all these sort of big banks and they all get together and they address some problem. Is there a similar thing for the energy sector, a sort of open source, collaborative, what are the problems we're trying to address? Let's chuck it all into a pot and we'll all put some resource in and see if we can figure it out.
Oh, yes. I mean, I think there are more in oil and gas from a collaboration standpoint that is being done today than it has been in the past. And in fact, it will continue to grow. I believe there are different alliances that are being put together to support the energy transition. There are also alliances that put together to have a common data structure, OSDU, for example, across the oil and gas industry. So I think you are going to see a lot more collaboration than what we have seen in the oil and gas industry, actually between the competitors.
Well, common data structure, it certainly makes sense. Many use the term digitization and digital transformation interchangeably. In your view, are they the same?
No, they are not. I know that many people use the two terms interchangeably. However, they're really different. Digitization is about keeping your current business process as is and using technology to make it more efficient. It is about removing your manual and paper process and digitizing it. Digital transformation, on the other hand, is about transforming your organization in a way that builds competitive advantage. There are a few companies that have gone through digital transformation in the last few years. One of my actually favorite example is one of the largest U.S. pizza chain company. Um, in 1998, the stock price of that pizza chain was about $3.50 per share. Their own CEO actually came on TV in an advertisement. I remember seeing it where he basically said that his own company's pizza tasted like cardboard and the sauce tasted like ketchup. And I'm talking about the CEO of that own company as an advertisement on TV. Yesterday, I was looking at the stock price of that company. The stock price of that company yesterday was $457 per share. Now, their pizza no longer tastes like cardboard for sure, but just by changing ingredient of the pizza, you cannot really have that kind of a turnaround. At the end of the day, I mean, as you know, Adam, pizza is pizza. I mean, there is not much innovation that you can do on it. Now, what the pizza chain did is that it digitally transformed their entire supply chain operations. They were the first in US who gave digital visibility of your own pizza's building process. They incorporated digital technologies in their entire organization. They were the first to introduce pizza delivery using automated vehicles. Digital transformation is about innovation, and it is about building that competitive advantage, competitive edge over your competitors.
Thank you very much indeed. Ranjan, I've been lucky enough to get a chance to kind of talk with you at a couple of summits, and I have never, ever had a single bad word to say about you. But if you think that all pizza is the same, you and I can no longer be friends. That is, I'm a massive pizza fan. Carl from Opus Resource, I believe we have with us. Hey, Carl, what's your question for Ranjan?
Carl, you're on mute. I do the top, and I always do that. Yes, Ranjan, wonderful speaking now right now. Really great topics, and I'm curious as you speak even about that company, and we look back to a lot of other companies, especially in oil and gas. Everybody has pushed innovation, digital transformation, and how great their company is doing to the public eye. But my question now is that post-COVID, do you think that some of that really that push becomes more internal? Do you think there's going to be more of a focus going forward that companies are going to really want to emphasize that strategy to their employees and upskill them, retrain them, like you mentioned before? Do you think that's going to be a priority in this coming year?
I honestly believe so. If you look at across all the industries, oil and gas is no different. I think there is a clear understanding of the internal employees of what kind of value they bring in. Keep in mind the internal employees, even though they may not be as skilled initially, not across the generic terms, but some of them, the ones that you're kind of thinking about, even though they may not be as well skilled, they bring in a very important um, element into the digital transformation. And that important element, I touched on it earlier, is the business process. It's about understanding how to engage the operators on the shop floor. So those two, you cannot just bring in consultants and get them, because the consultants may know very good about the new technologies, but they wouldn't know the years of experience that many of the internal employees have. So I strongly believe the industries across the spectrum, not just oil and gas, will put a lot of focus on retraining the employees, bringing in some additional help from consulting standpoint, from other partner standpoint, but retraining the employees, I think, will be a key element to it. And I think we started to see that, but I think it will continue to grow, which is why I mentioned in Chevron, we have a very extensive program that we worked in of how do we reskill our existing employees, even sending them to outside universities to get them trained on the new technologies.
Carl, thank you for your question. I hope that answered it, sir.
Yes. Thank
Lovely.
you.
Thank you, Carl. Much appreciated. Take care. So how do you communicate a digital roadmap throughout the business to ensure adoption is supported, Ranjan?
Well, to have a successful digital transformation, Adam, the roadmap must engage the business stakeholders and customer from day one. It is important to jointly work to build that vision. That is what builds the engagement within the business and make sure that this change we are talking about is sustainable and permanent. Now, another way to engage business is through pilots and training, which I can, or pilots and trials, which I can touched on it earlier. When you can show what good looks like in a small area, that energizes the organization and that helps push the team forward for more success, be able to scale that success that we have seen in a small area into a larger enterprise.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you much indeed. It was sort of coming towards the end now, so the last couple of questions. As you look at the digital transformations that you have been involved with, that have gone well, what have been the key success factors? Are there ones that you can identify across the board?
Yeah, there are actually several success factors for a successful digital transformation. From my experience, where I have led digital transformation successfully in other organizations and in Chevron that we are working on, and as well as in my opinion, there are three that are very key. First, we talked about earlier, business leadership engagement from the very beginning. There has to be a strong partnership between the business and the IT team. The change needs to be owned by the business team and operationalized through regular op rhythm. Second, digital culture. Right digital culture encourages innovation. Right digital culture enables the organizations to foster a workplace that motivates employees to try out new things and take new challenges. And the third element, which also we talked about it a bit earlier, is the talents. And the talents goes beyond that technology competency, right? It includes talents who understands the business process and be able to drive organizational change management.
Lovely. Ranjan, thank you very much indeed, sir. I'm afraid we are to time. Really, really appreciate you bringing us to a close on day 2 and for all your expertise. Thank you very much indeed, Ranjan. Take care. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, look, thank